Were
It's
they
still a big
successful?
job. It's still a big planet. And as we have said, they were sort of under what you would call a time crunch. Therefore, they needed assistance. They would never on their own have been able to extract enough of the material to aid and assist their world in time had they not had that assistance.
And were they successful in saving their planet?
To some degree, yes. But again, remember that what they did in creating Homo sapiens was against their laws. So the idea is that then, once Homo sapiens existed, the Anunnaki that had recalled those groups back home then had to guide, had to watch over. They still continued to extract some gold, but did it in a way that simply added to what they had already collected. They used it in positive ways for the balancing of the atmosphere of their planet, but nevertheless were also consigned to figuring out other ways in which that could be done. So they did not take advantage any further, any longer, of the creation of Homo sapiens in a negative way.
And what eventually happened to their planet? Is it still around?
It's still around, but it exists in a different dimension, and it is more connected to the star system you know as Cygnus.
And what do they call it? The planet?
Are you asking for the Anunnaki's own language for their own world?
Yes,
Ashea.
thank you. Many people use the biblical book of Revelation to point to events happening in the future, which they think is now. Others say the book was referencing Rome at that time. Are there really any truly prophetic verses in the Bible that corresponds to events happening now?
Yes, some of them. We're not going to go into detail about that. It serves no relevant purpose at this time.
Researchers at the Pyramid of Giza discovered what they call the Pyramid Inch stone, which they have extrapolated along with corridors of the pyramid to be a timeline of the future corresponding to major world events. The timeline appears to end in 2033. Is there any validity to this, and does it coordinate with open contact occurring in this window?
Yes, it does, because everything changes after that point. As we said, open contact will occur most likely within the next 5 years, and the changes that will result from that will start to really impact the direction of humanity from that point forward. So basically, your 5 years leads up to 2030. And then 3 years after that, you will see a massive directional shift in humanity between 2033 and 2050 that will reset the direction of humanity for its future evolution. So, yes, it's generally accurate in terms of when humanity changes direction and shifts its frequency in a new direction that will help it merge with the galactic family. It will be in the future remembered as an important shifting year, 2033, an important year of shift, an important direction change, what you call a sea change.
33 is also an important number. Is that correct?
Yes,
Mhm.
and this is why we operate in the idea of threes, because creation and existence is a trinity. Therefore, vibrationally speaking, the double 33 is a very powerful transformational gate that you are going to walk through.
In 1566, there was a UFO phenomenon over the city of Basel, Switzerland. Many discs appeared to be flying over for a day. This sighting reappeared 3 weeks later. It was recorded by many people in the local newspapers. What was that? Is that city a vortex for UFOs?
It is, but what they experienced was a wave from one parallel reality to your parallel reality of another wave of the grays coming through.
I read a book by Ramtha where he mentions events that are supposed to be happening, that are supposed to happen to our planet. He spoke about the fall of the world as we currently know it. Many things I learned from him resonate with me, but the idea of societal collapse does not. You have often spoken about the fact that we create our own reality. Does this mean that the idea of the collapse doesn't does this mean that if the idea of the collapse doesn't resonate with me, it won't happen? Also, could you share some information you might have about Ramtha?
We will share nothing about Ramtha because we do not endorse or deny any source of information. But the idea of the collapse is simply that you are using a negative definitional word. We have already talked quite extensively about the idea that your entire society is about to be reset and restructured, especially with regard to open contact. So you can look at that as the dissolution of your old society, a collapse, if you will, but a reinvention, a restructuring of the idea. And you are part of that. So you'll be around for it, but you don't have to see it as a negative collapse. See it as a restructuring, a redirecting, a reinventing.
My 5-year-old autistic son recently came to me with a piece of paper. He had written Orpek on the paper. He told me that this is his spirit name. He's only 5, and we do not really discuss these things. He asked me what my spirit name is, and I didn't know what to tell him. Why did my son do this? What is
Because
the spirit
children are
name?
still strongly connected to spirit, especially up to the ages of 7 and 10 even. They still know their connection to spirit. They still can communicate with spirits. So it's natural for a child to remember themselves as a spirit, as a soul, and can transfer a lot of information about the spirit realm to those in physical reality. So pay attention.
Can you explain the concept of time in a way the physical human mind can understand? What is time, and what role does it serve?
Well, as we said, time is a side effect of your consciousness shifting through multiple parallel realities billions of times per second. The idea of time is so that you can experience the process of creation. It's like saying, in a timeless state, I'm going to tell you a story. So here's the story from a timeless perspective. Once upon a time, and they lived happily ever after. What happened to the middle of the story? What happened to how did we get from once upon a time to happily ever after? What was the process? What was the adventure? What was the experience? What were the lessons? How did it grow? How did it change? What was the path? So, time exists within the soul, a certain focus of the soul, to experience the process, to experience the story unfolding so that you can discover yourself from a new point of view. That's how creation expands. As we have said, the structure of existence never changes. What changes constantly, what expands creation, is your relationship to it, your perspective of it, your experience of it. And that's what time is for, to allow existence to continue to expand infinitely so that you can discover yourself from a new point of view, which allows existence and all that is to experience itself from a new point of view, constantly, constantly, constantly experiencing itself, changing, expanding, growing, learning, being new. But the structure never changes. It is what it is. Existence is what it is. The experience of existence only happens with the idea of time. Otherwise, there's no experience. Things just are.
Is it possible to become too dependent on our permission slips, such as with crystals? I had something happen and I reached into my pocket to hold on to the crystals, and I realized I'd forgotten to put them in there and started to freak out, thinking I needed the crystals to keep me in the positive, even though deep down I know it's not true.
Well, if deep down you know it's not true, then you know that the answer to your question is yes, of course. Anything can become an addiction from the negative side. The idea of anything you use as a permission slip is to teach you that the power is coming from you. It's just that you happen to be using a particular device that aligns with your belief system to allow yourself to be more of who you are. So, yes, if you rely on it more than you need to, then yes, it can become a crutch. It can become an addiction. So the fact that you panicked when you realized you didn't have it might be a good indication that you need to start allowing yourself to wean yourself from that so that you can understand more clearly that you're the one that has the power and that the permission slip is just allowing you to be more aware of that. It's not coming from the permission slip. It's coming from you.
And this next person says, my contact crystal broke. Is that a symbolic representation of something? I still feel my heartbeat when I do the meditation on it.
Yes, in that sense, it doesn't really mean that much. The idea of the contact crystal breaking can be slightly a permission slip recognition that the idea of open contact has been slightly postponed. But that's all. Don't worry about it.
Can you tell us why it's been postponed?
I already did, didn't I?
I
Your
suppose.
reactions to the comments that were made act as a barometer that tell us whether you are or not ready for contact. So there is still a little more work to do. There is still a little more clarification to be had. And this is why we encourage all of you to start talking to one another, regardless of your belief system. Do that work, and the nature of open contact will become more positive. Refuse to do the work, stay sequestered in your differences and divisiveness. Open contact will take on a different flavor and a different color. It will still happen, but you may prefer the version of open contact that is more representative of coming together than being divisive. That's all we will say about that.
This person says they saw Wicked last night, the movie, and it was a thrilling experience. Why is the story of the Wizard of Oz and its iterations so significant in our culture?
Well, again, what we've been talking about, the idea of two different points of view that can come together or that can be flung apart. Which will it be? So use your magical selves, be the wizards that bring the two sides together so that the land of Oz, your world, can live in peace and harmony and respect instead of being so divisive. The splitting prism doesn't mean that you have to experience the idea of divisiveness. It simply means that you will experience whatever is relevant for you. It's not a contradiction or a mutually exclusive state of affairs to the idea of harmony and peace on your world. So create a new reality. You can shift. You're still splitting to new realities. You're still moving, still shifting through different parallel versions of Earth. But you can certainly do that with more togetherness than divisiveness. We would love to welcome all of you. Not that we have to, but we would love to welcome all of you and introduce all of you to your galactic family. But you're the ones in charge. Remember, fear and negativity are not conducive to open contact. That's all we will say. And we are not pointing fingers at any one side. You both have an abundance of fear and negativity. Let it go. Talk to one another. Support each other. Explore each other. Find the deeper issues in each other that you can all agree on. Recognize in each other's character what is representative of a willingness to be a true person, and what is representative of being something out of alignment. So, discern, but work together to do so. Again, there's a lot happening you are unaware of on many different levels. Come together, find out what that is, make a declaration of true independence. Move forward together. The time is close approaching for the introduction of the oracle. Are you done with your questions for the moment?
Yes, that is the end of our questions. Is there anything else you would like to add?
We will now add and allow and facilitate what the oracle will say. Once again, we remind you, before the oracle speaks, the two most important things that we have shared with all of you at this time on your planet to move you toward contact in a positive, creative, peaceful, harmonious way is to remember that it's not about what happens, it's about what you do with what happens that makes the difference, and to stay in a positive state no matter what manifests so that you can get a benefit from it. Remember those two things along with what the oracle now has to say. Again, we encourage you, since the oracle will repeat this 3 times in its transmission, to write it down so there is no misunderstanding. And again, I remind you, we completely leave it up to you to understand, to divine the meaning and the mystery and the interpretation of what the oracle will say. We will not help you with this. This is left in your hands. But use it creatively. Come from your heart. Come from your soul. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. We will now allow the facilitation of the oracle, who will repeat the transmission 3 times. The dark night of the soul calls forth the light within. And when the light of truth comes forth, the blind shall see once again. The dark night of the soul calls forth the light within. And when the light of truth comes forth, the blind shall see once again. The dark night of the soul calls forth the light within. And once the light of truth comes forth, the blind shall see once again. This is a being from the Interstellar Alliance Council. Again, it translates in your language simply as the Oracle. This was an oracular transmission. There may be more in the future as we get closer to the idea of open contact. We will leave it to you to ponder the mysteries inherent within the oracular transmission. We will thank you at this time for allowing this transmission to occur. Our deep appreciation to all of you. Our unconditional love to all of you. Take heart. Be at peace. Continue to breathe. Relax into the remainder of the transmission. Just breathe. Just breathe. Just breathe. Idea. Many of the questions had to do with the idea of demons being independent entities and were asked in that way. As we have just explained in the monologue, the idea of demons are simply a manifestational projection from the negative side of collective consciousness of humanity. So we would like to repeat the idea that they do not have their own independent existence apart from that collective consciousness, where, in a sense, when fear-based and negative beliefs take precedence in a person's consciousness, they can be crafted, so to speak, out of the energy of the collective consciousness on the negative side, formed, so to speak, from the clay of that negative collective consciousness, and are projections of any individual tapping into that negative collective consciousness to form the experience or reflection of a demon, and they are not independent entities in their own right. Therefore, that monologue has addressed all the questions that may have been asked in a way that implies that demons are independent entities, which they are not. So those questions are eliminated. They are already answered.
Okay, I'll do my best to avoid those. The first one has to do with the representation of the Lucifer archetype and the idea that there's an asteroid Lucifer in astrology that could symbolize how we might be influenced by darker energies or even be tied to unbreakable soul contracts. And what this person is asking for is a more empowering or positive view on how to understand and work with this archetype.
As you know, in your language, the name Lucifer actually means light bringer. So the idea, again, is that it reflects the concept of taking light in its highest form and reducing it energetically, vibrationally down to a physical level, lowering the frequency. This is what is meant by the concept of a fallen angel, that its vibrational frequency is reduced to such a degree that it expresses itself in physical terms at a lower density, a lower vibration. Now, this doesn't happen specifically to an actual angel, but the idea is representative and reflective of the idea of your higher natures, as you often say, the angels of your better natures, your true essential beingness, which is light and love, in a sense being lowered in frequency to be experienced and densified into physical materiality. So the idea of Lucifer is simply the idea of archetypally dealing with the polarity that exists in the way that it is expressed in physical reality between positive and negative, light and dark, so on and so forth. So it is that reflection which can bring up fears within an individual or within a collective and must be dealt with and transformed by turning it back into the light or balancing the darkness with the light within each and every individual.
Okay, thank you. And could you explain the concept of as above, so below when it comes to negative energy? When we experience wars, injustice, and dehumanization, what is happening above that it translates to these atrocities below?
The challenges on your life path are created in a spiritual blueprint that then play out in physical reality below, so to speak, in the denser reality of a lower frequency, but according to the belief system in the personality as to whether that is dominated by positive and or negative beliefs. So it's not necessarily that the blueprint itself contains the struggle or the strife that you experience in war and other kinds of experiences like that, but the challenges that are outlined in the life path blueprint are then colored by the belief systems in the physical personality to be experienced in ways that allow you to overcome those challenges relative to the physical personality point of view.
Okay, and can you speak about the demons or Satan that Jesus faced and those that archetype Archangel Michael faces?
Again, the idea is to understand that Yeshua or Jesus, just like you, understood the idea that demons are a projection of the collective negative consciousness of humanity. And it is simply a way of referencing that he, like you, had to deal with and transform and balance those energies within himself as a human so that he would balance them, face them, deal with them in a way that would allow him to transcend the idea of experiencing negativity for himself, but still outwardly would express that idea in such events as the crucifixion and the torturing and suffering to represent the idea of how humanity sees itself, how it represents itself, how it experiences itself in a negative way that can be transcended in a positive way by then the events of the upliftment, of the resurrection, and the ascension. The idea of archangels experiencing interactions with negativity is simply another way of saying that when angels deal with humanity, they recognize that that polarity exists, but they are, in a sense, above that and do not experience it directly for themselves.
And what exactly is black magic? Does it work? How? And why do some people practice it?
Again, this has to do with misconceptions of empowerment. It is the idea of utilizing synchronicity in a negative way. So the idea is simply another expression of polarity, recognizing one's self-empowerment for the creation and manifestation of certain events or effects in physical reality, but doing it from kind of a negative point of view, that one must proceed in the darkness in order to affect the reality or the life in the way that one intends or one prefers, rather than coming from the side of light.
Okay, and could you shed some light on the idea that people are possessed by demons, such as a nun crawling up the walls and the ceiling inside of a room, which was witnessed by a priest, or other such occurrences witnessed? How does an exorcist remove the demons from such people?
Again, this is happening internally. Remember that this is your own energy, and you are capable of manifesting many different kinds of effects, like levitation, crawling up walls, things like that, when the belief system is strong enough to allow those effects to occur and overcome what might be a typical understanding of physical reality, to demonstrate those abilities, to demonstrate those powers, but again, being done from the fear or negative-based side. A possession is, again, a recognition that it is your own energy. That's why it's in your body. But it is the idea that it is coming from outside because you are in denial of the fact that you are creating the demonic force out of the collective negative consciousness. So the idea of possession is a sort of polarized way of understanding that it is your own energy, but through the denial that it's happening from you, so you project it on the outside that you are being possessed by a demonic entity from the outside. But that is simply a convenient way of not facing the fact that you are actually creating this energy within yourself by going so deeply into the idea of negative and fear-based beliefs that it takes over your physical form to the extent that you can actually exhibit some of the features that you are talking about.
Can you talk about the idea of protection from negative energies and using things like crystals, flower essences, and other things to protect and create a positive energy field? How do things like that work? And does focusing on the idea of protection in any way create more of an idea of a threat and something to be protected against? Or can these things be explored in a positive and supportive way without calling all that in?
Yes, they can. Now, it's all well and good if you wish, and if it makes you feel better, to say that you are surrounding yourself with white light or using a crystal to clear the energies or sage to clear the energies of the room, so that you are using a permission slip to establish that you have a preference for a particular positive vibration, so that the idea is that you will not allow your energy to match the frequencies of something that you might deem to be a more negative idea or a negative belief system. So in that sense, yes, you can do that. But the overindulgence or the over worry of the idea of needing protection or requiring protection can in fact actually invite the idea of your energy matching more negative frequencies, because you are believing so deeply that you need the protection. You're actually creating the idea of the experience of being attacked, because you are believing so strongly that you might be attacked, thus believing very strongly that you need the protection, instead of doing it more lightly, just as a statement of the vibrational frequency that you prefer in your intentions toward all things and experiences in your life. So it's a matter of balancing that idea and using the permission slips in a lighter and more positive way, rather than steeping yourself in the fear that if you don't protect yourself, something might get you, which again is only going to be your own energy matching negative vibrational frequencies that would allow you to experience the effect as if you are being attacked by something outside yourself, when it's all going on internally. So again, it's a matter of balance.
So along those ideas, let's say
One
someone lives
moment,
in a
one moment. To answer the previous question fully, the idea of an exorcist is really simply someone who allows them to get in touch, allows the person that appears to be possessed to get in touch with the fact that it is coming from their own belief system, and that they themselves are manifesting that particular experience from their own energy. So in a sense, an exorcist is sort of like a type of psychologist that can aid and assist a person to get out of denial that they themselves are creating that effect, and that demons don't really exist as outside entities, but that that person is that powerful that they can create that effect within themselves. But they have to own it, they have to take responsibility for it, and then they will find that they are no longer, quote unquote, possessed. So that's what an exorcist actually does, is use the person's belief system in the negativity to overcome it by their belief in the positive energy that is capable of overcoming it. But it's all, in a sense, deep psychology that puts a person in touch and out of denial of their own fear-based and negative belief systems.
Okay, that's great. And as far as the protection idea, for example, if someone is living in a neighborhood and suddenly they become aware that there's been a number of robberies, and then that person decides for their own protection to put an alarm system in or take some steps in order to increase their security. Is that fear-based, or what makes that okay?
It is moderately fear-based, but at the same time, it can be done in a balanced way that simply recognizes the environment and the nature of the environment that you may be living in. So it's all right to be quote unquote practical and take certain precautions, as long as it doesn't become an obsession which could actually drive the negative experience toward you. So again, it's a matter of practical balance. It's a matter of understanding what environment you may have chosen to live in, so that you can take moderate precautions to simply make you aware and alert of what is going on around you with other people so that you don't necessarily have to pay that much attention to all the little details. It can do something for you to help you relax, to understand that then you can focus on other things by having taken a modicum of awareness, a modicum of protection in that context. But as long as it doesn't become a full obsession, then there is nothing to worry about.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This question is, because we are afraid of our own light, our own infinite power, is this why our ego creates the idea of demons?
Yes. Exactly what we explained in the monologue.